My name is Brian Cronin, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this tutorial on approaching the EQE, the European Qualifying Examination for Patent Attorneys. This is the sixth approach, time management. This tutorial is the last of a series of audio slideshows entitled Approaching the EQE, made up of 6 complementary approaches. Number 1, serving the client. 2, the working method. 3, legal thinking. 4, presenting arguments. 5, substantive law. And 6, this tutorial, time management, that we will deal with now. Let's start with the caption, time shortage in the EQE. Time shortage is the most common complaint of EQE candidates. Poor time management, in other words, running out of time, is, however, hardly ever a cause of failing the EQE, but instead is a symptom of failing through inadequate preparation. As you improve, you make more and more use of the given facts for your answers, and you correspondingly have to become better and better at working under time pressure. So time pressure is also for advanced candidates. Time shortage is due to under-preparation for underprepared candidates, and time shortage is a corollary to what I call result maximization for well-prepared candidates who are doing a very full answer. Let's consider in more detail time shortage in the EQE. You have to complete all papers of the EQE in a limited time. Each paper can be fully, and I emphasize fully, answered in the set time by a candidate above qualification level who is working flat out, who does not make any mistakes, who follows an optimum path and limits anything superfluous to a minimum. That is what corresponds to the so-called guinea pigs used by the examining committee to test the feasibility of doing the exam in time. Nevertheless, you can achieve pass level 50% without fulfilling all of these criteria. Time shortage is especially critical for candidates just below the pass level. What can we do in our preparation for the EQE to manage time? Firstly, time management is secondary to quality management. First, you have to achieve an answer up to pass level standard. Second, you have to do it in the limited time. You should gradually become more time conscious as you progress in your preparations. You can start becoming time conscious by timing your answers to the short D1 questions after having worked out the answer. For the B, C, and D2 papers, you can write your answer under time conditions after having prepared your plan. That's a good way of getting to grips with time for the EQE. It's not a good idea to begin by working on complete EQE papers under exam timing. This could lead to practicing to make errors. Instead, you should begin with allowing more time than necessary and then find ways of speeding up. Next, I'll overview time management for the EQE. Time management implies the following. Firstly, investing in preparation time. Secondly, efficient processing, how to achieve more per unit time. Thirdly, not losing time through errors. Fourthly, avoiding the superfluous. And lastly, distributing your efforts effectively during the exam. The problem is not just to finish the exam in time, but to accomplish the job in time and up to standard. I'll deal with each of these topics separately, starting with investing preparation time in order to save time on the day of the exam. Time that you invest during your preparations is time saved during the exam, and you can invest time during your preparations in getting to grips with the exam questions, in setting up a plan of attack for each paper, in streamlining your writing and the extracting of facts from source materials, by correcting substantive errors and misunderstandings in your preparation, and practicing to eliminate the superfluous. By doing all these things in your preparations, you can save time during the exam. Next is efficient processing, achieving more per unit time. You can achieve efficient processing mainly by following the recommendations in the working method tutorial, which we have already done. Here is a summary of plan, read, and write method. You read purposely as a function of what you need to complete your plan. The plan organizes the assimilated facts as a function of legal consequences, and you write your answer following the plan and integrating all of the facts from the source documents. You should not begin writing your answer until your plan is complete. So there it is. Purposive reading, efficient planning, and effective writing will help you to become more efficient for the exam. Next is not losing time through making errors. For this, I recommend that you consult the substantive law tutorial, which we have already done. Making substantive errors is penalized on the one hand by loss of credit, on the other hand by loss of time, and very frequently also by a possible carryover effect of the error. You must focus on all aspects of novelty and inventive step to eliminate squandering time by pursuing substantive errors. You should use your preparations for the different EQE papers to handle novelty and inventive step flawlessly by aligning with the solutions in the examiner's reports. For good time management, then, it's essential to be correct on novelty and inventive step, because substantive errors can lead to irreparable loss, and this goes against the instructions from your clients. Next, I'll talk about avoiding the superfluous. First of all, we'll deal with this paper by paper, some things that you can do or you should not do on each paper, superfluous things which should be ruled out. For paper A, no trivial subclaims, no lengthy discussion of secondary prior art, provide no support for the dependent claims, and don't submit any claims over 15. All of that is superfluous. For paper B, you should not put in an indication of the EPO address and the way of sending it by fax or by electronic transmission and so on. You should not put in a request for oral proceedings. You should not include statements like, I reserve the right to file a divisional, and so on. And you should avoid pompous opening and closing phrases. For paper C, you should not repeat matter in the notice of opposition in your statement of opposition. You should not present an overdeveloped presentation of the state of the art. It can be quite streamlined. You should not provide a summary of the prior art, and you should not provide a repetition of the opposed claims, nor should you present any weak arguments. All of that is superfluous for paper C. For paper D1, you have to limit to facts, legal provisions, and legal consequences and advice, and put in nothing else. And for paper D2, the main superfluous materials that are put in by candidates is a summary of facts, or a resume of the question, which is devoid of legal consequences. So all of those things are superfluous for those given papers, and we will now have a look at some generalities about avoiding superfluous matter in your writing by making a red pen exercise. At this stage of your preparation, I recommend that you make a serious effort to streamline your writing in your EQE preparations and in your everyday work. And you can do this by going through what I call a red pen period. Take a red pen and use it to strike out anything and everything that is superfluous. So in all of your writings, take out your red pen and eliminate waffle. Strike out anything that is not necessary to what you want to say. When you are reviewing your EQE answers, strike out everything that does not contribute to obtaining credit. Streamline your EQE writing to relevant facts, paraphrase legal provisions, legal consequences, and advice, and nothing else. A side effect of eliminating unnecessary waffle is that it can reveal that an essential component is missing. So having used your red pen to cross out everything which is unnecessary or useless, complete as necessary your writing and restructure your writing where necessary. So I recommend that you go through a red pen period at some point of time in your exam preparations. Next is planning to distribute your efforts. First of all, we'll talk about planning to distribute your efforts in the preparations, and we'll turn later to distributing your efforts during the exam. As your preparations progress, you should make a plan of how you intend to distribute your time for each paper. We will come to some examples later. You should compare your plan with the time you are taking during your preparations. Note that in your first preparations, you should take plenty of time to work through each paper. To give an example, if you are starting on the opposition paper C, the first time you approach a paper, you may want to spend 10 to 15 hours going through one paper C, and don't be alarmed if that seems to be a long time. After a couple of papers, allowing plenty of time, try to do each paper or segment of a paper in about the corresponding exam time, then spend an equal amount of time correcting your answer and comparing with the examiner's report, etc. So try to do the opposition paper, shall we say, in 5 hours, but then spend another 5 hours correcting it. You should also time the writing of your answers. I recommend that you write up segments of the answers under time conditions and that is a very good way of getting to grips with time. Now we'll see how to distribute your time during each paper, starting with the pre-exam. The pre-exam takes 4 hours, 240 minutes. There are 10 legal questions and 10 claim analysis questions. Each of these 10 questions has four statements, making 80 statements in all. So if you allow 5 minutes for the legal questions to read and understand each situation, that will be 10 times 5 minutes, 50 minutes will be taken up reading and understanding the questions. For replying to each statement, you could allow 4 times 1 minute for each statement, and you do that 10 times, so there'll be 40 minutes in all for making up your mind and putting down your answer in the box. So that will be 40 minutes for that. 40 minutes to read the client's description for the claim analysis questions. For the claim analysis, you need to allow some time to read the client's description, and it can be quite long, and it may be dispersed amongst several questions. But shall we say, allow 40 minutes to read the client's description, allow 5 minutes to read and understand and analyze each claim or each question. So you have 10 questions times 5 minutes is 50 minutes for reading and understanding each question, and again 4 times 1 minute for replying to each statement, which makes 40 minutes for answering the statements. If you adhered to that timing, rough timing, it would take you 3 hours and 40 minutes to do the complete exam, leaving 20 minutes over for any difficult questions where you have to spend extra time. There again, that is just an example, and you may want to adjust that to your own situation. The pre-exam gives you a very good opportunity to get to grips with time management, because you have to answer so many statements in such a short time. So make your own plan and compare it with your practice. When you are practicing, try to do the questions in the allotted time, then spend an equal amount of time or more for comparing with the examiner's reports and correcting, and for looking up the legal bases. Next, we'll have a look at paper A. Paper A drafting has a duration of 3.5 hours, which is 210 minutes. My suggested division of the time would be 1 hour for reading the client's invention and the prior art, 1 hour for making up and adjusting and finalizing your main independent claims, another hour for doing a set of 14 dependent claims or further claims, and that leaves half an hour for writing the introduction to the description, for writing that up. And I would say, as it's critical to write the introduction, it is critical to write the introduction fast during the closing minutes of the exam. Therefore, you should make a point of practicing fast writing of EQE type introductions in your everyday work. Always time how long you take during your preparations and prepare to write the introduction fast. Next, then, we'll have a look at paper B. Paper B has a duration of 3 hours, which is 180 minutes, and I would suggest, roughly speaking, 1 hour for reading and for making a plan, and 2 hours for writing your answer, which is the reply to the EPO, and bringing in all of the facts into your answer. I would suggest that in your everyday practice, you write your answers to EPO communications always in one go, using the same structure as you would use in the paper B exam. The reply for paper B follows a predetermined format, so you can practice using that format and variations at your work, so the format is at your fingertips. You may want to have some prompts for the different standardized wordings, and you probably want to prepare your prompts during your preparation. You may bring them with you in the exam to avoid a blackout, but you probably won't have time to look at them. Next is paper C. Opposition paper is a single paper, 5 hours, which is 300 minutes. And I would suggest roughly breaking down the time into two portions, 2.5 hours for reading and planning, and 2.5 hours for writing up all of the attacks. 2.5 hours writing is 150 minutes writing time, and you get points only for what is written down, so you get 100 points for 150 minutes writing time, which is 1.5 minutes per point of writing time. Keep track of time during your preparations and practice writing your attacks under timed conditions. Once you have confidence in writing a fully supported single opposition attacks in time, that is, single attack against a single claim, you are ready to write several attacks one after the other, as in the exam, in the overall time of 2.5 hours. Next is paper D. Paper D now is a single paper. D1 questions, the short questions, carry 40 points, which corresponds to 120 minutes. And it's a good idea if you try and work on your preparation so that you can do the D1 questions in slightly less than 2 hours. For D1, you have about 3 minutes per point. So, for example, a 6-point question in D1 corresponds to 18 minutes of exam time, which is 9 minutes for reading and planning your answer and 9 minutes writing time. If possible, you should work slightly below that time for the D1 questions. The D2 paper counts for 60 points, which corresponds to 180 minutes. Probably you may need as much as 200 minutes to finish the D2 part. For D2, you should allow 60 minutes or 1 hour for reading and planning, and, for example, 2 hours for writing, and possibly an extra 20 minutes if you've gained that on the D1 part. Doing a series of Part 1 type questions under time conditions during your preparations should give you a good feeling for time. In preparing for Part 2, you can write the answers to the different segments under time conditions, and you can work out the time from the points allocated given in the examiner's reports. If you can possibly reduce your time, the time needed for Part 1, the extra time will almost certainly be needed for Part 2. Next is a general summary of time management. Be conscious in your preparations for the exam. Be time conscious in your preparations for the exam. Even when you are not working in a limited time, keep track of the time. Also, keep track of the time in your work. In your exam practice, concentrate on getting as close as possible to the correct solution you can compare from the examiner's report, and you should strive to eliminate working on wrong solutions or side issues, because working on wrong solutions or side issues is going to lead to a catastrophic loss of time. If you work on the right solution, you should, in principle, be able to finish each paper of the exam. You should work on eliminating superfluous material and padding. As I mentioned previously, it's a good idea to go through a red pen period to try and streamline your writing. It's a good idea also to work out a timetable, as we have done, for example, for managing each paper, and use this as a guide in your preparations. Next, I'd like to turn to practicalities for the different papers. Use your preparations for the exam to start managing your time. Start with the short legal questions, D1. A 4-point D1 question represents 12 minutes or 6 minutes writing time. Try writing the answer once worked out in 6 minutes. For reading, planning papers A, B, C, and D2, allow plenty of time to correct and learn as you go. Begin by working towards a correct answer in excess time. Later, work under exam time and allow extra time for correction. For the writing of papers A, B, C, and D2, writing separate claim sets or arguments or attacks under time conditions is a good idea, and work on producing a complete answer in the target time. Next, we'll consider time management on the day of the exam. If you have prepared systematically and efficiently, time, hopefully, should not be too much of a problem during the exam. You simply proceed at a comfortable pace, like in your preparations, and progressively clock up credit by writing efficiently. You have to be prepared to accelerate writing in the last half hour of the exam, if necessary. If you feel a need to bring a timetable with you in the exam, do so, but you probably will be so absorbed that you won't have time to look at it. Next, I'll turn to some things to avoid. First, avoid working through masses of past papers under exam-like conditions, one after the other. This is simply practicing to make mistakes. Don't finish a paper in practice saying, "Great, I finished on time," and then leave it aside without correction. If you have done a paper in practice, you must always spend a large amount of time for correction and completion of the answer. In particular, if you do a mock exam, which means working under exam timing, don't gloat on your score or be dismayed. Instead, allow plenty of time to correct and improve your answer at the earliest opportunity. Avoid starting your exam preparations late. Starting exam preparations late means normally within the 6 months preceding the exam, and then cramming. Try and start your exam preparations earlier, and at all costs avoid cramming. Cramming has a negative effect on time management. It generates an overload, leading to mistakes. This brings us to the end of the approach on time management, and now I'd like to make a brief review of the 6 approaches to the EQE covered in this series of tutorials. Approach 1, serving the client. An argument is a approach 1, I've jumped a page there. Approach 1, serving the interests of your client, the EQE examination organization, will set you off in the right direction to becoming a proficient European patent attorney. The approach 1, serving the client, is mainly to develop a good attitude towards the EQE. Approach 2, the working method. If you follow the working method, purposive assimilation, organization and planning according to the legal consequences, and effective delivery of the end product, this will enhance the efficiency with which you process EQE papers. Approach 3, legal thinking. I advise you to align your legal thinking to the paradigm, fact, legal provision, legal consequence, and concentrate always on facts that lead to legal consequences. This legal thinking is very important for the EQE. Now we'll turn over a page for the last 3 approaches. Approach 4 is presenting arguments. An argument in the context of the EQE is a presentation of facts in support of a legal consequence. By delivering fact-filled arguments in appropriate format, you are going to capture maximum credit in the EQE. Approach 5 was substantive law. Here, it's essential that you should be correct on the substantive issues, novelty and inventive step. Your client, EQE client, insists that you comply with these requirements. Any error in the substantive issues of novelty and inventive step can be fatal in the EQE. And that brings us to approach 6, time management, which is the approach that we have just seen. And here I would say that you should be time conscious in your preparations for the EQE. Time management is important for candidates at all levels. You have to finish not only in time, but with an answer up to qualification level. What then is next? This series of 6 approaches on the EQE will be followed by tutorials on individual papers A, B, C, D1 and D2. Each tutorial will be based on a past paper of the EQE. The plan is that each tutorial, except that for D1, will be published in 3 installments corresponding roughly to the 3 phases of the working method: reading or assimilation of information, organization and planning, and writing. So each tutorial will come in three versions. So I look forward to your participation in these future tutorials, and here now are some closing words. This brings our tutorial on time management to an end. I hope it has been of value to you. By becoming time conscious in your exam preparations and by working to become more efficient, you can become more efficient and succeed better in the EQE. Be on the lookout for upcoming tutorials on other EQE subjects that I will announce on the Pat Skills blogspot. For further guidance on EQE preparation, you can, and I recommend that you do, consult the book EQE Comprehensive, available from createmybookallinoneword.com on the internet. Search word Pat Skills. À bientôt.